Okay, so today we have the distinctive pleasure of having an interview with Cactus Jack Barringer, who has had a incredible success story, which started out with Think and Grow Rich, and he has taken an idea to product to millions, having made successful ventures in product development and marketing. I won't say too much more. I'll leave the rest to him because his story is quite amazing. So, Jack, would you share with us what originally got you involved in Think and Grow Rich and the principles of Napoleon Hill?
Well, I guess, Bert, what I'd like to do is, first of all, a lot of people always refer to me as a entrepreneur, and I always tell them, no, I'm from Iowa. I'm an entrepreneur. I know that a lot of your listeners and stuff are quite familiar with Think and Go Rich and all the principles and everything like that. And so it's not my goal or purpose today to try to repeat things that they already know. I think it would probably be more interesting for you to sort of hear my story, my life's journey, and what led me to Think and Go Rich and what happened subsequently. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So at any rate, I do live in Iowa. I was born in a small town called Atlantic, Iowa, in the southwestern part of the state. And, you know, from where I sit right now in today's life and the success that I've had, I'm often asked about my education. People say, well, you must be pretty smart, Cactus Jack. You've got all those patents. You've done this, done that. And I sort of tongue-in-cheek say to them, well, let me just tell you how smart I am. First of all, I've never been to college. But in Atlantic, Iowa, I graduated from my high school. There was 121 in my class back in 1961. And I brag and I say I was second in the class from the bottom. I said I got straight D's and F's, and the only time I got that one D is when I copied off of a buddy. And as humorous as that is, it's pretty much the truth. I was not a good student, and just literally just barely got. I think they just graduated me from school just to finally get rid of me. And years later, my mother told me that when I was younger, you know, in the younger years of school, they actually put me in a class for slow learners. And so at any rate, that being said, because I had little to no education, I got out of school. My wife and I, we went together all the way through high school. And then after high school, we were engaged for a couple years and we got married. And before you know it, there's a couple kids. And I just realized that we were flat broke, going nowhere, had no money, and no education. What in the hell are you going to do? Right. And at that very same time, a friend of mine had knew that I was having some issues and stuff. And he says, you know, there's a book out called Think and Grow Rich. He said, you ought to get that thing, read it. He said, it's really cool. And you know how you always hear this kind of stuff from people. So I never got it. One day he come walking up to me and he handed me a copy of it. And not being a big studier or a book learner in school, and I'm not a fast reader, but anyhow, the bottom line on it is I did start reading it. And I'm, for the first time, hearing things that registered with me, different people learning a different way, you know? And so I I started highlighting different things that hit me, and I didn't just read that book. I devoured that book. I literally was so taken by what it was telling me, because nobody had ever told me that I could actually be something someday. All I was shown was D's and F's on report cards, and people telling me how stupid I was.
Wow.
And by the way, they were right. Well, at any rate, so that's how I became acquainted with Think and Grow Rich. And then I started off, and just for your listeners' information, I'm now 73 years old, and I have been acquainted with the book for close to 50 years.
Wow.
And one of the great stories is in my early years, I was so wrapped up in success and motivational tapes, I went to work for the Nightingale Clonette Corporation, which was Earl Nightingale, selling success and motivational programs. And 1 year, I won Salesman of the Year for the entire company because I was such a believer in them. And I was in Chicago at the Lincolnwood, and there was a huge convention there for Nightingale Conant. And that morning, nobody knew one another, really. I sat at this table for breakfast, and a man on my right was by the name of Fred Herman, who had developed the KISS program, K-I-S-S, Keep It Simple Salesman. Some people say Keep It Simple Stupid.
Right.
And so how ironic that was. Well, here I got on my right, and on my left side was this young guy. I'll never forget what he was even wearing. He was wearing a green three-piece suit, and his name was Bob Proctor. And the three of us sat there that morning and carried on this conversation. And when I got up from that table, this young Bob Proctor, my mind never, ever left Bob. And I've watched him over the years become one of the most foremost authorities on Think and Grow Rich. And so that's a great memory that I have. So at any rate, I start off on my entrepreneurial career, and what I was starting to tell you by being 73 years old, I have never, ever in my life had a job. I have went from one entrepreneurial experience to the other, from product development, and when I say that, I say that here again, tongue in cheek, because most entrepreneurs, when they become successful, they want to tell you how great they are and how successful they've been, all the money. And when I speak at colleges, at universities, I tell them more, not of my successes, but the failures along and how I've processed that. And yes, I've made tens of millions of dollars, but I can tell you for every success story that I've had probably 5 more stories where I've literally lost my butt on and lost millions of dollars. And so it's like I tell people in the movie The Godfather, when the Godfather says to his son, slaps him in the face because he was whining, and he says, "This is the life we've chosen." And this is the life I chose, the life of an entrepreneur, and to chase that big dream. And because I was willing to fail, that's the first thing I always tell people. Everybody's always willing to win. Everybody's always willing to win. But you've got to be willing to fail, take the hit, get up and move on. And this is common stuff that I'm not telling everybody. We all know that. back in about 1978. I'll just sort of get into some of my inventions and how Think and Grow Rich helped me with them. Does that work
Sure.
for you?
Absolutely.
When I was young, I was a pretty darn good arm wrestler. You know how young guys are always getting together, sitting down at a table, grabbing hold of one another's hands and arguing over the grip and the difference in their arm length. And well, at any rate, I used to go to a bunch of tournaments and stuff and do some arm wrestling. And I always noticed that there was always controversy, arguments about how you were grabbing one another's hands and digging fingernails into them and the arm length. Well, some of the things that I've developed over the years is if you want to develop a product, there's two things that I always look for. Does it solve a problem, or does it fill a need? And I seen a problem with arm wrestling, and I was at a tournament one night, and I got out a napkin, and I drew out a little design of some handlebars that looked like bicycle handlebars. And I thought, well, if they would grab these things, they couldn't fight over their grip. And then I thought of another thing of making elbow pads that would raise and lower like a piano stool. All right, now, here again, I'm not a manufacturer. I know nothing about product development. But in Think and Grow Rich, what did he talk about, Napoleon? About the mastermind group. And he said, if you don't know something, surround yourself with people that do. Well, I got on the phone and I called a mechanical engineer, and I asked him if he'd be willing to meet with me, and I got that set up. And then I called an electrical engineer, and I had him come to the meeting. And then I come to a cabinet designer, and I had these three people at this meeting. And I showed them my design, my little thing that I'd drawn on a napkin about an arm wrestling machine. And we started brainstorming, and back and forth, and then it led into developing a prototype. And then that prototype, after about 6 or 8, because back then we didn't have all these CAD designs, we physically built these things. That was our prototypes.
Right.
Well, anyhow, after I got that machine done, we started holding tournaments in bars and lounges. Your listeners can Google Monster Arm Wrestling. That was the name of the machine, and you'll see all kinds of well, at any rate, so we started holding these tournaments in bars and lounges, standing room only. You could not even get into them. It was back in the era of the mechanical bull.
Right.
Long story short, I set up distributorships and dealerships, sold them $15,000 to $25,000 a piece, sold over 300 of them all over the world, and built the largest arm wrestling organization in the world, and operated in 50 states and 8 foreign countries, and made millions because I seen a problem and solved it using the mastermind principle.
Wow.
All right, so that was my first invention.
How old were you then, Jack?
Well, let's see. What would I have been? I'm 73 now. I'll let you do the math. I'm
Sure.
70 now, and it was about, let's say, 1980.
Okay.
So 40 some, I guess, huh?
Let's see. We're in 2016 minus 70, 19 minus 73. So you were born in 1943.
Yep.
So you were about 43 years old.
Yeah, that's about right. All right. So at any rate, from that success, went on to, like I say, I built that up. In fact, every year here at the Iowa State Fair, I think this year was like 36 years straight in a row that we've held the Monster Arm Wrestling Championship. I'm not involved in it anymore. Haven't been for years. I've gone off into many, many other things. All right, so there is a story about the arm wrestling machine. Now let me tell you, the flip side of that story is, have you ever heard the expression, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Absolutely.
All right. I decided I wanted to come up with a team arm wrestling machine. I'd been so successful, and that team arm wrestling machine was really where two people could arm wrestle two other people as teams.
Right.
But it had a design flaw in it. The way the bars were set up. I sold about 30 dealerships in that, and in the next 90 days, I had over 25 broken arms.
Oh, shoot.
Lawsuits from every place, and ended up having to bankrupt that company. Oh, wow. And lost just a fortune on it. And so this is, here again, I tell not the success stories, but entrepreneurs need to know that bad things happen too. And what do you do after that? All right. So now, so here again, moving on through this entrepreneurial journey. One night, my wife and I are watching television, and there was a commercial. I was manufacturing liquid cleaners at the time, all-purpose cleaners. And as you know, there's 10 million different brands of cleaners. I watched this commercial, and there was a little guy with a funny hat on called Speedy Alka-Seltzer. Right. And he went, pop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is. I watched that commercial, sat there for 5 minutes, looked over at my wife, and I says, well, I got the next big thing. Said, what's that? And I said, cleaner is 95% water. And why are people already have their own water? Why doesn't somebody develop a tablet that you can drop into water that is just like an Alka-Seltzer and make a bottle cleaner? So I got a hold of my chemist the next day, and here again, the mastermind group, and said, can you develop a powdered formula that will, I want something that will not only take out grass stains, I want to take out blood stains, I want to take off grease, I want this thing power packed to literally take out any kind of a stain. So the chemists go to work on this for 90 days, and while they're working on the formula, I'm working on the marketing, and I had tooling made to stamp this powder out, not to look like an Alka-Seltzer, but a 45 caliber bullet. Because I'm Cactus Jack, and if you're Cactus Jack, by the way, for your listeners, I don't run around in a suit and tie. I've got a ponytail down to my butt, a beard, and I'm full-blown cowboy. And if you go to my website, there's lots of videos where you can see me in infomercials and TV shows. And I'm sure Bert will give you that later on in the show. But at any rate, I then go to an ammunition company. I get ammo boxes. I put these bullets in them, and I called it Cactus Jack's One Shot. Now, mind you, I have not sold $1 of this product. And I heard about a new company that was coming to Iowa looking for new products called QVC, the Home Shopping Network. I'd never even heard of them before. And some people from our church said, boy, you ought to go down to that thing. There'll be a lot of Iowa companies. And there was over 300 companies that showed up for this 3-day trade show. It's a product search. And they narrowed it down to 20 finalists. I was one of the 20 out of the 300 picked to go live on national television. And they give me a purchase order for $100,000. And after we built the order, I went live on the air. I was supposed to be on 10 minutes. 8 minutes into the show, it came out on the screen, sold out. And I ended up winning the thing for the entire state of Iowa. And they give me another purchase order for $250,000, flew me into Westchester, Pennsylvania to their studios. I go live on the air there, and in 2 10-minute shows, I sell out the $250,000. And in the next 4 years, I sold $10 million off of QVC alone.
Wow.
And then it led to a national infomercial, and all because I seen a little commercial on TV. But more importantly, did I see something and I get an idea? How many times have we heard this?
Right.
Thought determines what you want, but action determines what you get. I didn't just think about it. I acted upon what I thought about.
Would you say that one more time, Jack? Thought determines.
Thought determines what you want, but action determines what you get. That's what most people don't get about Think and Grow Rich. They think all they got to do is think, and that's not right. It's what you do about what you think about that gets you rich.
Right.
People are at one little thing out. So at any rate, that led me to the QVC experience. Then that led me into the infomercial industry, which was a whole new world that I got involved with. I invented a fishing lure called, I was always a very avid fisher. And now this will just tell you how you can get mega $1-million ideas from the stupidest places. You ever seen the movie Jaws?
Sure.
In that movie Jaws, I'm watching, and they were chumming. How did they catch Jaws finally? They chummed. They put blood in the water, and Jaws came. I thought, what if I could take my cleaning concept with those bullets and have a blood bait made that had dried toad, frog, all kinds of things that attract fish, and have it stamped into a bullet. So I went back to the drawing board, had these little pellets made, and then I drew out a fishing lure that had a open cavity in the bottom that you could push this bullet into. And you cast it out in the water. The bullet got wet. It started fizzing. It wiggled the lure like a wounded minnow, and it left a trail out of blood as you're reeling it in. Called the Cactus Jack's One-Shot Catch-A-Lot Fishing. Shot a national infomercial on that with a fellow by the name of Kevin Harrington, who I have been friends with for well over 30 years. He was the inventor of the infomercial and is one of the sharks on the TV show Shark Tank. Right. Now, so at any rate, here again, thought determines what I wanted, but action determined what I get. Because, we always, and let's go back to Think and Grow Rich here a little bit, and something else I want to share. I have a book that I've written, and one of the things that I talk about in it is the phrase, I always say, if you want to possess it, you have to obsess it. And if you really think about this, is for all the rest of the book to work, the number one chapter in there is desire. You got to have the desire, but it can't just be a desire. It's got to be a burning desire. It's got to be something that won't let you go to sleep and that wakes you up in the morning. And all you do is think about that idea. That if you're obsessed with it, then what happens? All you do is think about it. And if all you do is think about it, as we know, you become what you think about. It's a no-brainer. If you obsess it, it's going to happen. All right? And here again, I understand we all know these things, but it doesn't help to get one more kick, does it? So At any rate, you tell me, Bert, what else can I share with your listeners? Anything that you'd like me to talk about?
Sure. Well, I'm going to open this up to let them ask questions. So all you guys have to do is you have the ability to raise your hand to ask a question. When I see your hand raised, I'll reach out to you. My question was for you is, where did you find the money to fund the inventions? Like, for example, with the QVC, they placed some huge orders.
Oh, yeah.
How did you get the money to
Oh,
and fulfill?
First of all, let's go back to the arm wrestling thing.
Right.
The way that I funded that was literally blood, sweat, tears, and I created my own cash flow. We instantly started holding tournaments. And I would charge $350 to hold an event at a bar. Then we had a $10 entry fee per contestant, and we'd run 50 to 80 entries per tournament. Then I went out and I got sponsors. I got beer companies, Budweiser, Pabst Blue Ribbon, Miller. They were dying to dump money on me because we were packing these houses. What does everybody do when they're there? It was a traffic bill. So I had instant cash flow, and then I started selling these dealerships, and I was making $20,000-$30,000 a week between the tournaments and selling those things. So I created my own cash flow. It was out of necessity because I didn't have any credit at the time or money.
Right.
Yeah, and so the initial order with QVC, I had the money to fund that inventory, but once that cash flow started rolling, I mean, I got to tell you, I made a tremendous amount of money because the markup is incredible in cleaning products. So I made several $1 million on that. So I mean, but here again, I was a risk taker, a chance taker, and I did something about it.
Right, right. In the book, it says all it takes is one idea to create wealth, and not only did you get the idea, but you acted on it. And that's critical and the key.
Yeah.
The other thing you said is whatever you obsess about, it'll happen.
If you obsess it, you will possess it.
If you obsess it, you will possess it. I like that. And what was it you were obsessing? Was it a certain dollar amount?
Well, I'm going to tell you. I'll go back to when I was in school and I wasn't learning anything. I didn't, and it was just that I was never really taught any value of education or anything. And when I was sitting in those classes, the teachers were talking, I was staring out the window. Literally. I remember to this day, staring out the window on the school when I was in junior high or even younger, seeing airplanes flying over. And I would look at that airplane and I would just say, boy, someday I'm going to have an airplane. I'm going to fly an airplane. Now that really registered with me. And then I remember a guy who owned a milk company in my hometown, and he drove a brand new Cadillac. And I said, boy, someday I want to have me a Cadillac. And then I remember another guy, I was sitting in a meeting once, and I looked over, and on his finger, he had this ruby and diamond big cluster ring on it. Oh, my God, I got to have one of them. And that's what I thought about. I thought I was the most materialistic person in the world at the time. When I got out and got married, I thought about airplanes, and I thought about Cadillacs, and I thought about diamond rings. The typical, well, at any rate, here's the bottom line. One day came when I told my wife, I said, I'm going to start taking flying lessons. She says, well, I don't know whether we can afford that or not. And I says, that's not the point. I said, I'm going to be a guy that one day flies airplanes, and I'm going to need it in business. And so I just went and started taking lessons. I didn't know where the money could come from. Guess what? One day I had a pilot license. And then it wasn't before long, I bought an older used airplane. And then a few years after that, I bought my first new airplane, and I've been flying for darn near 40 years, and I can't tell you how many airplanes that I've owned. Why? Is because I obsessed. It wasn't my education. It was my possession. I was possessed. Same thing happened with Cadillacs and Mercedes-Benz S500s. I didn't have the brains, but I had the obsession. And I drove a lot of Mercedes S500. And I can tell you right now, and you'll see this when you see me on the website, look at my fingers. They're covered with rubies and diamonds. I'm a flashy guy. The more flash, the more cash. Gaudy is in the world Cactus Jack lives in, too much ain't even a good start. I mean, this is my stick, you know, and you'll see all this stuff. So, anyhow, did I answer your question?
Yes. I'm gonna. Hey, Brent, do you have a question for Cactus Jack? I unmuted you. How about you, Dan K? Do you have a question for Cactus Jack?
No, not me.
Okay. Do you guys know how to raise your hand? I'm going to unmute everybody. So if you have background noise, please mute yourselves. Okay. Does anybody have a question for Cactus Jack? You're all unmuted now.
Cecilia.
Sure, Cecilia.
So my question is, you said that whenever you had a thought to make something, you would call an engineer, somebody, an electrical person. How did you go about finding them and the right match?
Well, really, I just started asking questions around town. I was, because I didn't know these people, and I would say, hey, you know anybody that does mechanical engineering or this and that? And they'd know, and then I'd talk to the next one. You know anybody that, and then all of a sudden somebody would pop a name, and I would give them a call. And so it was just literally talking to people and asking questions. And back then, of course, we didn't have the internet the way we have it today, but we had yellow pages. And so I would just look them up and then start making some calls. And then, here's the neat thing about it is by surrounding and gathering my mastermind group, and here, because I was the one that organized it, and I was the one that had the dream, when it's all said and done, it became Cactus Jack, the inventor, and very honestly, to this day, 90% of my inventions, I've got exactly 12 patents, and have probably brought between 75 and 100 products to market. 90% of these inventions, it's just because I thought of them and I did something about them. It wasn't my genius. It was all these people that I gather into my fold.
Right.
That help?
Yes, thank you.
Does anyone else have a question for Cactus Jack? Wow. I have tons.
Something that we might want to talk about, Bert, quickly is the Shark Tank experience.
Yes. Great.
Yeah, in season 1 of Shark Tank,
How did you get on that show again? You just applied to be a participant? Was that as simple as that?
There is over 20,000 people, the first season 1, that applied to get on the show, and I was one of the 20,000. I sent them a video, and in the video, I knew that two things that I thought of in advance that most people figure out, that this show was not going to be about me getting money, and it was not about the sharks investing money. The show was about entertainment. So I sent them a video, and here I am all cowboyed up, and I'm reciting poetry, and I'm telling them different stories. By the way, what I went on there with was a new invention that I came up with to do push-ups on. It was called the body jack. And I was overweight, and I needed to lose some weight. The doctor wanted me to do push-ups, and I couldn't do one. If I couldn't do push-ups, guess what? I'd seen a problem. Other people probably couldn't either. So by seeing that problem and then figuring out a way to solve it, it developed a product. So I sent this videotape to Mark Burnett Productions, and I don't know, it's probably 2 weeks after I mailed it, I get a call from one of their casting people, and said that they were quite intrigued by my tape, and they started asking me questions. And they said, well, you'll be hearing back from us. So anyhow, they had narrowed it from 20,000 down to 5,000, and then from 5,000 down to 500, and I made it down to the bottom 500. And then they narrowed that down to 147 people that they were going to fly out to the studios and film for the show. And because they were filming a whole season at one time. And that first season, there was only actually 49 that actually got on the air. And of the 49, 17 of us got deals. I was one. Barbara Corcoran and Kevin Harrington each put up $90,000. I got $180,000. Plus, Kevin Harrington put up $300,000, produced the infomercial on it.
Wow.
And so, at any rate, the whole Shark Tank experience was just a fun, incredible thing to happen. And but here again, if you watch Shark Tank to this day, you'll see a lot of people walking on there with the suits and ties and looking like business people. But you'll also see a lot of entertainment-oriented stuff, because that's what that show's about.
Right. The question that I had was, I heard there's this thing called the Shark Tank effect. It's similar to the Oprah effect, where some of these people go on there and they may not get a deal, but because of being on national television, they get a spike in sales, and some have even gotten other people reaching out to them to invest in their company.
Oh, you can't fathom the Shark Tank effect. It's massive. There's a lot of people that got on there that didn't get deals.
Right.
Didn't get deals. And were literally panned that somebody else seen it, got a hold of it, and has made them multimillionaires. I mean, that's happened many, many times. There was one guy in particular on there that had that. It was a wine. It was a single serving of wine in a glass.
Right. I remember that episode.
Right. He got on there twice, and him and Kevin O'Leary just did not get along. I mean, they hated one another. Well, yeah, he never did get a deal. 2 times being on that show. That thing, he got it going just because of the Shark Tank effect, and he's made an absolute fortune just from being on the air there.
Wow.
Yeah. So at any rate, now one other part that happened because of being on Shark Tank is I got a call from Mark Burnett Productions saying, can you be in New York on such and such day? And I says, what's going on? And he says, all the sharks, we're launching the new season, and we're inviting 4 of our people that have been on the show to be on there and ring the opening bell at the NASDAQ with the sharks. We'd like to have you be one of the 4. Out of all the people that have been on that show, I got picked to go in and ring the opening bell at the NASDAQ.
Wow.
And then my picture showed on the big screen up there, the big Sony screen,
Right.
downtown Manhattan. So that was quite a mental experience. The kid from Atlantic, Iowa, that was a DNF student, flunk out. He's got his screen on the NASDAQ screen in New York City. What a head trip that was.
Wow. Now, I understand that you're still working other deals or projects with both Barbara Cochran and Kevin. Is that true?
I just got back last weekend. Kevin Harrington's 60th birthday was down in St. Pete, Florida, and he invited me to come down, and it was sort of a who's who for the infomercial industry. Tony Little, I don't know if you remember who he is. He's
Sure.
the guy with the Gazelle that does the Gazelle glider.
Gazelle, yeah.
Tony has sold $1.5 billion in product on infomercial. Tony's a good friend of mine. He was there. Forbes Riley, Sully Sullivan. He's the one that does the OxyClean commercials now after Billy May passed away.
Right.
Sully and I started doing shows together years ago down at Home Shopping Network. And so anyhow, we had a big birthday party bash for Kevin, and the next day invited my wife and I over to his house. That was quite a thing to see. He paid $5.5 million cash for it. And so, yeah, that was the entire Shark Tank experience has just been incredible. But anyhow, to answer your question, yeah, I do a lot of consulting. That's my main thing now, is other people that have got products, ideas, inventions. I'm very selective on the ones that I take on. They've got to be something that's in my genre and something that I really feel that I can help with. And so I do that. Other than that, like I say, I'm 73. I'm not as active as I used to be, but I still just thoroughly enjoy it, and especially because I got something new I'm looking at every day.
Right.
In fact, your listeners, I'll give you my website if you'd like, Bert.
Sure, absolutely.
It's cactusjackmarketing.com.
Cactusjackmarketing.com. Outstanding.
My email
Sure.
is jack at cactus, CACTUS, JACKS.com. Jack at cactusjacks.com.
Outstanding. Jack, I have a question from one of the listeners, and their question is, what did you do when you had those business reversals, like that machine that broke 25 arms? What did you do to stay positive and just keep going?
Well, I'm going to tell you exactly what I did. I did what everybody else does. I whined, I bellyached, I pouted, I woe is mead. I mean, it's natural, and it's okay to not like what just happened to you. That's what other people got to know is not only is it possible, if you're an entrepreneur, and if you haven't been knocked on your rear end at least 3 times, possibly more, then you're not a real entrepreneur, because you're not taking risks. You're not a chance taker. And things don't always work out. And once you understand that all you got to do is be right once out of 17 times. And that's what happened to Abe Lincoln. We all know the story of all of his failures.
Right.
But he became president of the United States. And Walt Disney went bankrupt 3 times. Kevin Harrington, my partner from Shark Tank, been bankrupt twice. This is life we've chosen. But if you're willing to just hang in there, pay the price, the rewards are monumental.
Right. It's like I remember Paul Meyer said that he started 140 businesses and only 40 of them survived. And he said, but the reason I'm successful is because the 40 that survived were able to pay the losses that I took on the other 100 that didn't.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I mean, it's just, you know, here again, these are all things that we've heard. We gotta start believing that this is America. We live in a country that gives you the right to fail and start over again. Nowhere else in the world can you do that.
Right. That's true. That is true. And you know, this is the land of opportunity. You just have to have the right ideas. One of the questions that the other people had was, did you create for yourself when you read Think and Grow Rich, a definite main purpose statement? Did you follow the 6 steps in the chapter on desire? Develop an exact...
I'd like to tell you that I did, you know, these specific this and that, but I can't say that I really did. But what I did, my specific thing is that I was going to make this happen. What this was, I very honestly, I had not labeled it at that point. All right, now, here's what I equated success with. The things that I told you about, the materialistic stuff, the airplanes, the cars, the things. Now, I will tell you this, my definition of success has rotated so much over a lifetime. And what true success really is. And now I have all those things. That's not what it's about. You know, success is your health. Success is your family, your family's happiness. You know, all of these things that came free to start with. I just didn't realize it back then.
Right.
You know, I was successful before I started because I had a good family and great kids. I just didn't realize that's where it was.
Outstanding. I think that's all the questions we have. Let me just check the... If anybody has a question from the mastermind group, just post it in the group so I can see it. And everybody is unmuted, so if you want to ask a question, go right ahead.
You talking to me or them?
To them, sorry.
Okay.
Does anybody else have a question for Cactus Jack?
Hey, good morning. It's Karen.
Hey, Karen.
Hi, Karen.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us this morning. We all, I'm sure, I don't mean to speak for everybody, but so appreciate you. I know you said you devoured, when you read the book, you devoured the book. And you didn't actually create a statement, but obviously you had a very definite main purpose, and you went for it, and you took action. So I heard that. Did you read the book multiple times? Did you just start over? Did you read it every day? When you say you devoured it, can you give us a little more of that?
And we all know what highlighting is and underlining things. But I not only, because I was a slow learner and not a fast reader, I would sit there and I would read a paragraph, and if that one hit me, I would sit there and I would reread that same paragraph, I don't know how many times. And then I'd circle it. And the next day I'd get up. And so I would spend probably months on one chapter because I didn't want to just read it. I wanted to get it. That's the thing, is it isn't about reading that book. It's about getting it and then doing what you got. So, and like I say, that was, you know, many years ago. I don't think there's been a day that book has not been in my sight, or I haven't picked something up to, you know, rephrase this or whatever. Plus, I go around to colleges and universities, and my main focus is Think and Grow Rich. I've got a student that came to one of my classes at Iowa State University 7 years ago. His name was Brandon Adams. Google Brandon Adams. The guy has just, he came to me after hearing me talk about Think and Go Rich. He became obsessed with it like I did. Do all of you folks know the new movie that's coming out called Think?
Right. Yep.
Brandon is in that movie. He's in that movie. In fact, he's the one that's doing all their crowdfunding for them, raising the money, and he's done so much for them. They've actually given him a part in the movie. And he was a student at Iowa State 7 years ago, and it's just incredible what he's done.
So he took your advice, read Think and Grow Rich, and then began applying the principles?
Oh, yeah.
Outstanding.
Brandon Adams, king of crowdfunding. You see his whole story.
Question for you. With crowdfunding, what do you think now is the opportunities for people to take an idea into implementation and production using these sources of income, of capital that we didn't have available to us before?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag of tricks. Very honestly, crowdfunding we all hear the stories about how the Pebble watch, a few years ago when it came out, they were trying to raise $100,000. Right. Within a matter of 4 weeks, they brought in over $3 million.
Right.
And there's stories like that. But I will tell you this, for every successful story on crowdfunding, there are 100 ones that didn't work. It's not as simple as people think it is. And it's like you've got to know what you're doing. I don't care how great your product. And here's the other thing that I want to share with your listeners is everybody comes to me and they tell me they got $1 million idea and how it's going to make a fortune. Right. I said, well, let me give you your first consultation free. You can have a terrible idea, terrible product, and you can make millions. 80% of the stuff sold on infomercials. It's junk with phenomenal marketing. The Snuggie is a stupid blanket with holes in the seat.
Right.
Sold $2 billion worth worldwide.
Wow.
Billion. Why? Great commercial, great marketing. All right? And then you take some phenomenal medical instrument that will save lives, put in the hand of an inventor that knows nothing about marketing, and he loses $10 million that sits in his garage. 10% product and 90% marketing.
Yeah, I always believe that. You can have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, you got no chance of making a sale.
There you go.
Outstanding. Does anybody else have any more questions for Cactus Jack? All right. I think, well, we'd like to thank you, Cactus Jack, for your time. I do appreciate you sharing it with us. And what's the name of the book that you just wrote so we can go ahead and get our listeners to take a look at that? And I know it's on Amazon, right?
How to Get and Market $1 Million Ideas.
How to Get and Market $1 Million Ideas. Outstanding. So I'll post a link to Amazon in the group in a little bit, so you guys and gals can help support some future inventions that may do incredible things for us. And Cactus Jack, we thank you for your time and for your knowledge. And I'm going to go ahead and end this call unless anybody else has any questions. You have one last chance. Other than that, we're going to go ahead and...
I got one last thing to say.
Sure, Cactus.
If you want to possess it, you have to obsess it. I'll leave you with that.
Oh,
thanks, gang. Appreciate talking to you.
Great call.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.